Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Bilikis. Today's tutorial will be on how to make a closed wrap top with an elastic band at the lower part and also on the wrist area. It is very easy to make and I'm going to show you step by step, right from making the pattern to sewing the top. Please, if you are not yet subscribed, ensure you subscribe and tap on the notification bell to get notified each time we put up a video. You can follow me on Instagram, Bilikis Signatures, and on Facebook, Sewing Innovations. So right now, let's get started. I'll be making use of this fabric. I think it's going to come out nice, and I'll be making the pattern for myself. So let us get started. This is a sketch of what we are going to be making now. As you can see, it is an overlap top, as you can see. Then we have an elastic band at the lower part and also on the sleeve area. Although this could be altered, you could have it as a short sleeve, 3/4, or a long sleeve as this. Then, essential measurement you need to know is the measurement from the nape of your neck down to your waist. That's before the band. So for me, I'll make use of 18. But because I still want some fold, since it's an elastic, I want some fold by the time I place it on my waist. So I'll be adding extra 2 inches to that 18 inches to make it 20. So now the measurement from my nape to my waist will be 20 inches. Then for this elastic band, since I'm making use of an elastic that is 1 inch, what I'll do now is to double it because it will be folded. That will maybe 2 inches instead of 1. Then I need extra 1/2 inch after folding it to sew it up to the top. So that will be 2.5 now. So that 2.5 inches will be added to the 20 inches to make it 22.5 inches. So right now, let's go over to the paper to start drafting. On my pattern paper now, I already have some markings which I'm going to explain. First, you know, this top we are making is an overlap top. So for that overlap, I already left the space here. How do I determine that? All you have to do is to use your bust span measurement. That is the distance from one nipple to another. For me, it is 9 inches. I'm going to divide that by 2, which will be 4.5. To that 4.5, just add extra 1/2 inches to, just add extra 1/2 inch to it, which will make it 5 inches for me. You should take your own measurement too. Then from the edge of your paper, you are just going to measure that 5 inches. Here I measured 5.5 inches. Why? Because I will need this extra 1/2 inch to add my seam allowance to my pattern. So all you have to do now is to measure from the edge of the paper your bust span measurement, half of your bust span measurement plus 1/2 inch. So mine is 5 inches. So that is it here. Inches, then come down here 5 inches. So that was how I derived this space I left over here. This remaining 1/2 inch is for my seam allowance. So the next thing now is to draw a straight line, and all my drafting will start from this very straight line I left. Now, I told you the length of the top without the elastic band is 20 inches. It was actually 18, but I added 2 inches to it. You don't have to do up to that. So for me, I'm making it 20 inches. So looking at it, after this starting point, I measured 20 inches. 20 inches for the top. Now I'm going over to the band. We calculated it to be 2.5 inches. So here I have 3 inches. We calculated 2.5. Because I'm using an elastic of 1 inch, I will need some ease around it for the elastic to move around easily. So instead of using exactly 1 inch, I will just make it 1.25 to have some ease around it. So instead of having 2 inches, that will now be 2.5. 1 inch and quarter times 2, that will be 2.5 inches. Then the extra 1/2 inch to turn it in after folding. So that's all sum totals to 3 inches. So that is why I have 3 inches below. This box will be for the main top, while this will be for the elastic band. So now let's start drafting. So the first thing I'm going to do now is to insert my shoulder measurement. My shoulder measurement is 8.5. It's actually 17, so when I divided it by 2, I have 8.5. 8.5. Then you should know about the 3 inch, 8 inch standard. So from the starting point, I measure 3 inches, then 8 inches. That is to determine the shoulder slope. So from this initial 8 inches, first I'll go down by half an inch and then 1 inch. So the half an inch is for the back, while the 1 inch is for the front. I'm drafting both the front and the back panel together. That's good. The next thing is to insert my arm side depth, or half of my armhole measurements. So for me it is usually 8.5, but because this is a free top, I'm just going to make it 9 inches. There's no crime in that. If you want to increase yours, 9 inches, 9. Thing is to measure my shoulder measurement of 8.5 inches on the arm side depth. This is what I have now. So this is for the back, this is for the front. The next thing is to curve out the armhole. Just get half of that. So for the front, you come in by 3/4 of an inch. So this is the front shoulder slope. And for the back, we are done with that. The next thing is to insert my waist measurement and my bust circumference. My bust circumference is 42 inches. When I divide that by 4, I'm going to have 10.5. But here I'm going to add enough ease because it is a free top, so I want it to be free, especially now that I've added some weight. So what I'm going to do is to add minimum of half an inch or up to 3/4 inch because I want it to be free on me. So if I'm adding half an inch to 10.5, that will make it 11 inches. Let me just maintain 11 inches, that's fine. So that's what I have now. Coming to my waist circumference is 36 inches. So when I divide that by 4, I'm going to have 9 inches. But here now, because of the elastic that's going to be here, what you are just going to do is to place your bust measurement right down here. Just make it 11. So instead of 9 inches, now I'm having 11. Or even if possible, you can even add more because the elastic is going to gather it up to give you that desired fitting at the waist area. I'm just going to mark this same measurement down here. So for this very one too, I'm going to make it straight. So we are done with all those parts. The next thing I'm going to do now is to curve out the neckline. So what you are going to do is to determine how wide you want your neck width to be. So for me, between 4 to 4.5 is just fine. So maybe I could just make it 4.5. So 4.5 will be along the slope. Can you see? Now we are drafting for both the front and the back. So the back neckline will just be 1 inch from the nape line, 1 inch. So this is for the back now. I'm going to finish it up with a bias strip. So that's for the back. For the front now, I will just make a straight line from this point till this bust span measurement. Then you can also make a slight curve if you want it to be a bit curved, but I'm just going to make it straight down here. If you want to control your neck depth, so all you have to do is to measure from the nape line. For instance, you want it to be 8 or 9, so you just mark it at that point, 8 inches, and then you start from this neck width straight till this point. If you want a slight curve, you could make a bit of a curve here before connecting this straight down there. So it depends on your preference. So but for me, I'm just going to make it straight down. Usually nice. So that is it for the front. Then this very part has to be straight because that is the elastic. Okay, so that's for the elastic band. So our pattern is formed now. While cutting, I skipped that part, so you should cut the back armhole first. You can see the front armhole is still intact. Then the back shoulder slope, the front is still intact. Because after cutting the back, then we'll trim off the front armhole and the back armhole. So don't make that mistake. So I only cut the back armhole, back shoulder slope, then back neckline. So the next thing now is to just cut this off. So just look at what I'm going to do here. So can you see this? I'm going to stop at this start line because we need to cut all this for the back. Only the front will this be cut out. So after getting here, I'm going to stop and then cut this. So can you see that? So I'm going to fold this in to cut the, I'm going to fold this in to cut the back, and after cutting the back, I will come back to cut the front, the shoulder slope and the armhole line. Now I've folded it, as you can see, so I'll place it on my pattern to cut this out and then add seam allowance all around. After that, we now come back for the front. I've cut it all out, and looking at it, I've added 1 inch seam allowance here, 1/2 inch all through. So this is what the back panel looks like. Let me see. So the next thing now is to finish up the pattern. First, I'm going to cut the bring this up. Can you see that? So we have the front panel now. The armhole. Now I have the front pattern, so I'm going to place this on each other, and note it has to be, it's either if you are cutting on the wrong side or right side, both of the fabric has to be facing each other because we are cutting out 2 of this with open ends. Right now I'm about to cut the front panel. So what I was explaining to you is when folding, make sure, like now I'm cutting on the right side, make sure the wrong side are facing each other because we want to have 2 panels now matching at the end of the day. Then you can place it this way. So for this part, you just add seam allowance of like 1/4 inch because we'll be using a bias strip to turn that. So the next thing now is to place it and pin it all down to cut it out. Right now I've cut it all out. So this is for the front, this is for the back. Now here you can see I just added 1/4 inch all through, as you can see, and then no seam allowance is added to this point because after folding it with bias strip, then it matches up with this straight line. So I only added 1/4 inch seam allowance to the overlap, and all others is 1/2 inch, then 1 inch for the side. So that is it. Let me just open it up before we go to the sleeve area. This is what I have now. As you can see, it's looking good already. So this is the overlap. So by the time we fold in the elastic, it's going to match here because this is where it stops. So we are going to go to the sleeve area. I have my sleeve pattern here now. I'm going to teach you how to alter the pattern. You can place this on another pattern paper to do this, But what I will do is to just do it on my fabric directly. Now remember, there's going to be an elastic band at the lower part, which we added total of 3 inches to the top. We are going to do the same thing here, but before that there's going to be elastic here, so we need more fabric at the edges. So all I'm going to do is to add 1.5 to 2 inches at the wrist area, at the wrist line. Add 2 inches, then connect in a straight line to your bicep line here. So you can add the paper, tape it down, and just connect it straight down. Then coming to this other side, I'll add 2 inches to the wrist area and connect my bicep line. I now have to add 3 inches to this lower part. Because the elastic we are using is 1 inch, so 1/4 inch for ease. When we double that, we have 2.5. Then we need extra half to sew it up, so that makes it 3. Except you don't want it as long as this, you could reduce it to 2. We don't want your, because this is the actual length of your sleeve, but it's good to have some puff at that area. So at the lower part now, after adding 2 inches to it, you come down by 3 inches straight down and then cut it all around and add your seam allowance. This is my sleeve right now, so I've added my seam allowance 1/2 inch. So here I just added the 2 inches I told you about. So this is the 2 inches. I made a straight line to my bicep line, then had 1/2 inch seam allowance. You can add up to 1 inch, but that was what I added. Then I added 3 inches. Then I added 3 inches for the band. So I made a notch here after the 1.25. So that's where the elastic is going to be with some gathers. So having done that now, all my panels are ready. So the next thing is to cut out my bias strip and then we can start sewing it up. I have my fabric on the wrong side now, you can see. So it's overlapping each other. So the first thing I'm going to do is to sew up the shoulders. I left 1/2 inch all around, so I'm going to take 1/2 inch on the shoulder area. After doing that, after sewing up the shoulders, I'm going to use my bias strip. You can use the store-bought one, but I made mine. I can even use my bias tape maker to just make it easier. So I'm going to fix the bias strip all around the neckline all down. So first I'll sew the shoulder and then that. I've sewn the shoulder and then I sew up the sides. So right now I'm about attaching the bias strip. So as you can see that. So just pin your bias strip all around. Just from one end, you sew it all down till the other end. So here now, I can just trim this off. That is what I have. So another vital thing you have to do is to notch all around the seams. Because I left in 1/4 inch, so I just took small allowance, because if it is more, you have to trim it off. So now all I have to do is to notch. I'm going to notch it all around. Can you see that? So it's better you just notch it. So I'm going to, especially the neck region. I've notched the bias seam all around. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to open it up this way, then folding 1/4 inch to cover up the seam. After doing that, then you now fold it in to have a neat edge here. Then you can also very close to the edge, like 1/8 inch all through before we close up these parts. I finished the bias strip. You can see how that looks. I finished it all around. So you decide where you want your overlap to be, either this way or this way, anyone at all. But I think I'll prefer this way. So make sure you give it a good press. I've not given it a good press yet. So what I did to this end is this. I just used my overlocking machine to finish up this edge. Then I just folded it in. Just 1/2 inch, as you can see. That was why I add extra 1/2 inch to my bust span. So you can see that. So that's it. So I'm going to do that to this very one, just to show you. So the next thing now, after doing all that, is to adjust it. You press it first, then adjust it, then you pin it all around. Then I'm going to run a straight stitch all through here. Can you see? So as to secure it before we now fold it in for the elastic. So that's a side. Now going to the sleeve. This is my sleeve pattern. So the next thing now is to stake in the seam allowance left on it. So just fold it this way, take in your 1/2 inch seam allowance. After that, you will now have to fold in at the end. This is what I did to this second sleeve. After sewing your seam allowance of 1/2 inch, then you fold it at the end, noting the elastic measurement. So 1 1/4 you have to fold in, then fold in the 1/2. So I left an opening here, so which the elastic will pass through. So all I have to do now is to put in my elastic. So all you have to do, tie it around your wrist to be a little bit tight. Then you are just going to sew up the remaining one. On the lower part, as I've told you, can you see, from one end to the other. Then I just tack it down with about 2 or 3 stitches here and also here, so that you don't have it opening. So everything is secured. Then I also have my sleeves ready. The elastic has been fixed in, and you can see it's all ready to be sewn. So what I'm going to do here is to fold it in. Remember, for the elastic it is 1 1/4. 1 1/4 plus extra 1/2 inch to finish it at the edge. That will be 1 3/4. So 1 3/4 will be folded in now. You have to turn it to the wrong side. Now what I'm going to do is to fold 1 3/4 upward. So you measure it, or you can mark it with your chalk. So you will have something like this. Then you now take to your sewing machine to now start folding it. So 1/2 inch will be folded in, that we left. So the remaining 1 1/4 now will be sewn all around. Just pin it down. You see? Then I'm going to just sew it all around. I've sewn up the lower part, as you can see, leaving an opening here to pass my elastic. So for the elastic, I just have my waist measurement minus 2 inches. That's what I have for this. So I'm going to fix it up and then attach my sleeve. Now I've inserted it. I will be cutting this away from the measurement of the elastic I have before. So this is what I'll be having now, which is okay for me. So I'm going to adjust it. First, I'm going to close this upper part. This is my top. I really like it. It looks nice. So please ensure you make your own top and share with us on our Facebook group, Sewing Innovations. You can tag me on Instagram, Bilikis Signatures. Ensure you make for your kids too, not just for yourself. Please, if you are interested in our online classes, we have them every month, and also the sewing tools. Make sure you contact us with the number in the description box below and also in the comment section. Please make your top. My name is Bilikis. I have to go. Bye.